Timothy Treadwell was a man who, during his youth, struggled to fit into human society. He dropped out of college and spiraled into alcoholism and drug abuse. That all changed after his first trip to Alaska at the age of 32, when he encountered a grizzly bear. You might ask yourself what that has to do with anything. Well, that encounter gave him a sense of purpose and belonging that he never found among humans. He felt like he was one of them. He gave up drugs, never touched them again, and began returning every year, living among the bears and documenting his encounters on camera. His footage quickly caught the attention of the media and the authorities. He believed that he had developed a special bond with the bears and thought that nothing was ever going to happen to him, seeing himself as part of their group. Because of that belief, his interactions with the bears became increasingly reckless, getting extremely close to them, touching them, and creating the impression for people watching at home that maybe bears weren't really all that dangerous. This behavior alarmed authorities, who issued him multiple warnings. Eventually, they introduced a new rule associated with his case, stating that campers must move their camps every few days to prevent bears from becoming accustomed to human presence. Timothy, however, never truly accepted or followed these rules the way he should have. Timothy Treadwell spent 13 summers living among grizzly bears in Alaska. Over the years, many people warned him that what he was doing was dangerous. Wildlife experts, park rangers, and even people close to him told him that wild bears are unpredictable and that one day his lifestyle would end badly. But Timothy refused to listen. He believed the rules of nature didn't apply to him and instead created his own rules based on his deep desire to truly belong among the bears. He didn't see himself as an outsider observing them. He saw himself as a part of their world. In 2003, however, things took a very different turn. Timothy was now 46 years old, and for the first time, he decided to invite his girlfriend, Amy Huguenot, to join him. He wanted to show her what he believed was a secret world, a place no one else had ever truly witnessed the way he had. To Timothy, this wasn't dangerous, it was sacred. But there was a major problem with this expedition. It took place in early October, a time when most campers and researchers leave the area entirely. This is when bears become significantly more aggressive. Winter hibernation is approaching, food sources begin to disappear, and bears enter a critical phase where they must eat constantly to gain enough weight to survive the winter. During this period, bears are more territorial, more desperate, and far less tolerant of anything they see as competition. Timothy and Amy not only ignored this reality, they made the situation far worse. They moved their camp to a location where multiple bear trails converged, an area heavily traveled by bears. Nearby was a lake filled with salmon, one of the most important food sources for grizzlies preparing for hibernation. In other words, they placed themselves directly in the middle of an active feeding zone. A few hours before a bush plane was scheduled to pick them up, the weather began to turn. Evidence found later indicated that it was raining heavily. Amy was inside the tent when she suddenly heard Timothy calling her name from outside. Her first instinct was to turn on the camera, but almost immediately, his voice changed. Calm words turned into panic, and panic turned into screaming. She left the camera inside the tent, but she managed to start the audio recorder. When Amy came out of the tent, she saw a massive grizzly bear attacking Timothy. He was screaming for her to hit the bear, desperately trying to fight it off. On the audio recording, Amy can be heard telling Timothy to play dead, a survival tactic that sometimes works when bears attack out of fear or defensiveness, but this time was different. This bear wasn't attacking because it felt threatened. It was attacking because it was hungry. The audio recording of the attack has never been released publicly. Only a very small number of people have heard it, and all have said it should never be made public. There are rumors online of a leaked recording, but none have been confirmed. What you're about to hear is a dramatic reenactment based on reports of that day, and I warn you, it's extremely disturbing. No one knows how long Amy stayed alive after the attack, but both bodies were found about 24 hours later by the pilot who was supposed to fly them home. They didn't have any bear spray or any other way to protect themselves, so there was nothing, absolutely nothing, that could have saved them that day, other than not being there in the first place. Stephen Weber Jr., a 40-year-old man, and his girlfriend, Kenesha Antoine, had been dating for a while, and he planned to propose to her in a way that was out of the ordinary. They booked a stay at a resort on Pemba Island, but what they didn't know was that what was supposed to be one of the most beautiful moments of their lives would take a turn for the worse. In September 2019, they checked in at the Manta Resort just off the coast. This location offered an uninterrupted view of the ocean and a rooftop area to relax and enjoy the sun. However, none of these features was as important as the one below the surface. A room surrounded by windows, giving a 360-degree view of the marine life surrounding the resort. This room was the exact reason Stephen had decided to propose on this trip. He prompted Kenesha to go down and start recording while he put on swimming goggles and dived down to one of the windows of this underwater room, where Kenesha was waiting with her phone in hand. He unrolled a sheet of paper that was inside a Ziploc and pressed it against the window.
What does that say? Oh, it's so cute. What? What?
It read, "I can't hold my breath enough to tell you everything I love about you, but everything I love about you I love more every day." He then flipped the note, and on the other side was a text saying, "Will you please be my wife?" He also showed a wedding ring he had bought for Kenesha. After that, he began swimming upwards to hear her response. At this point, Kenesha stopped recording and ran upstairs, eager to give her answer. But when she looked outside, there was absolutely no sight of Stephen. She went to the roof to check her surroundings, hoping to see him through the water, but he was nowhere to be seen. Stephen had vanished while swimming upwards. Kenesha immediately realized the gravity of the situation and called for help, screaming for her fiancé while locals rushed to assist. Unfortunately, it took too long to find him. Stephen was discovered floating in the water, and by that point it was already too late. They attempted CPR, but nothing worked. Stephen had miscalculated how long he could hold his breath underwater and drowned before reaching the surface. Looking back at the video, you can actually see his hand shaking, a warning from his body that he needed air. But he had waited too long in an attempt to make the moment special. What was meant to be one of the most beautiful moments of their lives became the worst moment for Kenesha and the ending one for Stephen. In early 1959, a group of hikers decided to head out on an expedition across the mountainous region of the Western Soviet Union. The group consisted of 9 experienced men and women that were extremely familiar to the Siberian wilderness. Yet, this adventure would prove to be their last. In the early morning of January 23, 1959, a ski and hiking team of 10 boarded a train heading for the Ural Mountains in the middle of the Soviet Union. The group consisted of 8 men and 2 women, with Igor Dyatlov as the group's leader. Over the next few days, the group continued to alternate between modes of transportation. First a bus, then a truck, then a horse and sleigh, and eventually they proceed on foot and skis. On January 28th, one of the hikers, named Yuri Yudin, had begun to feel quite ill and eventually decided to head back while the remaining group of 9 continued as planned. The group resumed their expedition across the snow-covered outback and documented everything of note using diaries, as well as multiple cameras. On February 1st, they reached the foot of a mountain known to the indigenous Mansi population as Dead Mountain. They spent the better part of the day progressing up the slope and eventually decide to set up camp only a few hundred meters from the peak. These are some of the last photos recovered from the cameras, and the last sentence of the final entry reads, "It is difficult to imagine such a comfort on the ridge, with shrill howling wind, hundreds of kilometers away from human settlements." Weeks passed. Friends and relatives grew worried as no word came from Igor or his team. On February 26th, a search party finally located the campsite. The scene was immediately alarming. The tent was half collapsed and partially buried in snow, yet the hikers' belongings were left orderly inside. The tent had been slashed from the inside. Whoever or whatever had caused this forced them to escape urgently, but not recklessly. 9 pairs of footprints led away from the tent, descending the slope toward a nearby forest. Oddly, the impressions in the snow were calm, suggesting the hikers were walking deliberately rather than running. The trail extended for about half a kilometer before disappearing beneath fresh snowfall. Following the faint trail, searchers discovered the frozen bodies of Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri Krivonishenko beneath a large cedar tree. Over the next 2 months, the remaining bodies were recovered. The first 2 were found almost completely undressed, wearing only light shirts, underpants, and socks, survival gear wholly insufficient for temperatures hovering around -30 degrees Celsius, -22 degrees Fahrenheit. The cedar tree showed signs of damage up to 5 meters high, as if someone had climbed it, perhaps searching for the tent or fleeing from a threat. 3 more hikers were found between the cedar tree and the tent, lightly clothed, facing the direction of the tent, seemingly struggling to return. Minor injuries and hypothermia claimed their lives. 4 of them were also intoxicated at the time of death, likely reducing their ability to endure the cold. The final 4 hikers were found at the bottom of a ravine, 75 meters from the tree, in the opposite direction of the tent. Their injuries were extreme. 1 had a fractured skull, 2 suffered multiple broken ribs and massive internal bleeding. These injuries, the medical examiner concluded, were consistent with the force of a car crash, yet no vehicle was present. 1 woman had a missing tongue and 3 bodies had missing eyes, raising speculation about foul play or animal scavenging. Some clothing was found to be abnormally radioactive, though at levels explainable by natural contamination or previous work with radioactive materials by a couple of the hikers. The final report, cryptic and vague, concluded, "The cause of death was an unknown compelling force which the hikers were unable to overcome." Over the years, countless theories have surfaced. Avalanches, secret military experiments, UFOs, even mythical creatures roaming the mountains. Some fixated on tiny details, like Dubinina's missing tongue or the radioactive clothing. Others pointed to mysterious lights dancing across the night sky. Yet, almost all of these explanations either lacked solid evidence or were blown out of proportion. This was the Dyatlov Pass case. Officially, the investigation was closed decades ago, but the questions never went away. For years, no one could fully explain why 9 highly skilled mountaineers would leave their tent in the middle of the Siberian winter, nearly naked, or how some of them suffered catastrophic injuries without any obvious external trauma. In 2020, Russian authorities reopened the case and offered a final explanation. A rare slab avalanche may have hit the tent, causing panic and internal injuries, forcing the hikers to flee. On paper, it sounds plausible, but even today, many experts remain unconvinced. Avalanches always leave traces, and that night, the mountain was eerily quiet. So, the question remains, what could have terrified 9 experienced hikers so much that leaving the safety of their shelter felt safer than staying inside? Whatever happened on Dyatlov Pass, it made rational people act irrationally, and it claimed the lives of every single one of them. This video was recently recorded in India, and while I don't have every detail, it shows a man in his mid-20s named Dwip Bala. He was on a mission to catch a Russell's viper, one of the most dangerous snakes on the planet, and move it away from a nearby town so no one would get bitten. For those who aren't familiar, the Russell's viper is one of the 4 deadliest snakes in southern Asia, and it's considered the most venomous of them all. Even with immediate medical attention, a bite can be fatal in 8 to 20% of cases. Yeah, that's not the kind of creature you want to underestimate. The footage, recorded by a local, shows Dwip carefully trying to place the snake into a container to relocate it safely. But as you'll soon see, nothing ever goes exactly as planned when you're dealing with one of the deadliest snakes in the world. If you got here, comment the word outdoor. While trying to carefully place the Russell's viper into the container and close the lid, Dwip accidentally lost his grip, and the snake struck. Vipers like this are deceptively quick. When they're resting, they look sluggish and slow, but the moment they strike, it's almost impossible to react in time. After the bite, he immediately let the snake go. He managed to stand, but sadly, it was already too late. The bite was just on his finger, and he was rushed to a local hospital almost immediately. Later, he was transferred to a better-equipped hospital in Kolkata, but despite the efforts, he didn't survive. Watching the footage, you can even see him taking a photo while holding the snake. It makes you wonder if he felt a bit invincible, knowing people admired his bravery. Maybe that brief sense of confidence made him overlook the most important thing: safety. That small lapse was all the Russell's viper needed. The lesson here is painfully clear. Never underestimate venomous wildlife, no matter how experienced you think you are. 1 second of overconfidence, one miscalculation, and it can cost you everything. Dwip Bala tragically paid the ultimate price for underestimating the speed and venom of this deadly snake. That's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed these kinds of videos, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more. You can also turn on the bell so you'll get notified whenever I post. And if you want to keep watching, click on one of the videos on the screen. I'm sure you'll enjoy those too.